So you found your way back to my humble abode once more, have you? Well, have a seat and make yourself comfortable. Just brush the bones out of that chair. I've been meaning to move him anyway. There now. Don't worry about the mess. I'll have Hakkar sweep it up later. Now, though, it's time for something important. For we find ourselves in the start of a new year, filled with all sorts of possibilities. New years mean new beginnings, and that often means the start of new campaigns. Before you get too caught up in all your plans, though, it might be a good idea to sit down with your table and have a session 0. For those who've never heard the term before, let me break it down for you. Session 0 is the first session you have before your first session. It's where you lay the ground rules for the upcoming campaign, where your players can ask questions, and where you can get all your pre-game stuff out of the way. A good Session 0 is about more than rolling stats and building characters, however. It is a chance for you to get out ahead of any problems, and to make sure the game you're running is actually the game everyone else wants to play. That's why the next time you have a Session 0, you might want to consider... The primary purpose of a Session 0 is to lay out your expectations as the Dungeon Master. That means you should draw up a list of do's and don'ts and present them to your players. For example, you might want to declare no evil characters for this game, since you don't want to deal with the increased difficulty that kind of alignment can bring. Perhaps you only want your players picking races out of the base book, or you want to make it clear which expansions are and are not allowed in this game. From where you're sitting, some of these things might seem obvious. Say them anyway. Make sure you and your players are all on the same page, rather than assuming they'll figure it out on their own. And remember, this should be seen as a negotiation. If your table feels strongly about some of your do's or don'ts, open up the floor and talk to them about it. You don't want to start a new campaign on a sour note. Chances are that you gave your players an elevator pitch to get them to your table. However, if you're running a Session 0, put together a deeper cut to pull your players in. For example, if you're running a game that you build as a political thriller, give your players a few more details than that. Is there going to be a lot of politicking, with backroom deals and social maneuvering? Or are there going to be Mission Impossible-style missions with a lot of infiltration and silent takedowns? Are you freelance operatives, agents of the Crown, or something else entirely? Don't give your players spoilers, but make sure you toss in a few meaty story bits to give the rest of the table something to work with. It will hook their attention and get them invested in the story you're telling. Bring pamphlets. They help. This one sounds obvious, but given the number of horror stories I've heard about dungeon masters who didn't take this advice, I figured it was worth mentioning. Character creation should be a collaborative effort between the players and the dungeon master. Offer recommendations if you're asked, and try to get the ball rolling regarding backstories, important plot points, and where the characters fit into the world. One thing that can really help this process along is having a character creation document on hand. These simple checklists often get the wheels turning in the players' heads, and it's a good way for you to extract a few hooks straight from the horse's mouth. What is this character's profession? Who raised them? Where are they from? What are they afraid of? A good dungeon master can weave all of this into an ongoing narrative. If you're looking for a list of questions to get you started, there's one below in the information section. Just remember not to get too detailed with this one. A few questions can be a helpful exercise. A lot of questions feels like a homework assignment. There are a lot of dungeon masters out there who like to play it close to the vest before the first session starts. Some of them will watch as their players choose options that won't ever come into play, or which may be actively harmful to their overall goals. Don't be that dungeon master. No one will think you're clever, and they certainly won't appreciate that you kept silent while they polished up their best knife to bring to this gunfight. I'll give you a prime example of what I'm talking about. Say one of your players wants to make a ranger, then as a favorite enemy, they choose Fae. They have a whole tie-in with how their character was scarred by fairies and how they always keep iron on hand just in case. Here's the thing, though. As the Dungeon Master, you know there aren't going to be any Fae creatures in this campaign. At all. So you just sat by and watched them waste an important class feature, knowing full well it would never come into play. Whether it's not letting your players know there will be no way to get better guns for a gunslinger, or not bothering to inform the enchanter that most of the enemies will be immune to mind-affecting magic, you aren't going to make anyone feel challenged by letting them run face-first into a wall. You're just going to make them feel like you're punishing them for not being able to read your mind. I repeat, don't be that Dungeon Master. As a Dungeon Master, it's all too easy to take full ownership of the game. After all, you came up with the plot, and you're the one doing all the heavy lifting. So why wouldn't it be your game? Well, because without players, there won't be anyone for you to run through the campaign. That's why. An easy way to open dialogue with your players, and to make sure you're all participating, is to ask what they'd like to experience in this game. Perhaps one of your players has never had a proper dungeon crawl, whereas another wants the opportunity to earn their fighter a real knighthood. Keep an open ear to these things, no matter how broad or specific they are, because when your players realize you're giving them what they asked for, you will instantly enter the ranks of best dungeon master ever. Trust me, it works every time. That's all for this installment of Dungeon Hacks. For more useful links, as well as for our social media details, Patreon, and Ko-fi, check the description below. And if you've enjoyed this little chat of ours, then like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Lastly, if we didn't cover a helpful tip that you think we should have, leave it in the comments below. The same goes for any future topics you'd like to hear me hold forth on in future episodes. Until next time.